Good evening, everyone. My name is David Freese. I'm the mayor of Tonganoxie, and I'm calling to order this November 17th, 2025 meeting of the Tonganoxie City Council. Ms. Huntington, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mayor. Mr. Partridge?
Here.
Ms. McCutcheon's absent. Ms. Stevens? Here. Mr. Donnelly? Here. Mr. Dale?
Here.
Would you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item two on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the meeting dated October 20, 2025. I didn't see anything in them objectionable. If anyone else did, say so. If not, let's have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dale. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'll second.
Oh, yeah.
I apologize. Mr., who had it first? Donnelly? Ms. Stevens. Okay, we've got a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 on the agenda is the consent agenda in which we review bill payments from the previous period. Are there any concerns about the bill payments? If not, I would accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Partridge. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 5 on the agenda is Resolution 11-2501. Consider approval of the donation of property. Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mayor. Just pulling up the materials, excuse me.
My apologies. We didn't have anybody sign up to speak. Just guessing.
We did not. You're
Okay.
correct. We did not. Okay. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but I will outline a little bit of information. The draft resolution included in the agenda packet outlines some of the terms and is included with an attachment of the donation agreement between the City of Tonganoxie and Mark and Jonathan DePietri. This is the property that's approximately 2.71 acres located between the Tonganoxie Bark Park and the city's Chieftain Trail System pedestrian bridge over Tonganoxie Creek. This property is bordered on 3 or 4 of its 5 boundaries with connecting properties by other civically owned property owned either by the city or the Tonganoxie Recreation Commission. Earlier this year, the property owners reached out to members of the Rec Commission, elected board, as well as city staff, and indicated their interest in pursuing a donation agreement before the end of the year if possible. The city attorney prepared the draft donation agreement and is preparing some of the requested title work to help prepare the closing by the middle to end of December, according to the current timeline. We have had recent discussions earlier today, even with the property owners, and they're still moving forward with their support for completing this process. The city, under this donation, would then provide the property owners with a certification of the donation occurring, and the property owner would obtain an appraisal that they would use to file tax-related documents to their benefit at a later time. So the city, besides some level of cost split with the Rec Commission for the donation agreement, legal services, and title commitment, wouldn't have any incurred costs as part of this project. We have reviewed the property in person with Kent Heskett, the Public Works Director, and also reviewed our city records for the previous building deconstruction on the site when it was the Franklin Creamery facility, and don't have any negative reports to share with you on those fronts. So happy to take any questions you might have.
Council, do you have any questions?
Just one comment. I think we had an easement along that to get access to that low water crossing for the sewer that
Yep.
goes through there.
Yep.
I assume we looked at that and we're going to make sure that stays because I'm sure Kent is well aware of that. So
Certainly, yep.
all that remembered. It's been a long time when we had that conversation, but
Yeah, directly across from the VFW, you're right, yep.
Anyone else? Seeing no more conversation, I would accept a motion.
I would make a motion that we approve resolution number 11-2501, approving and authorizing real estate donation acceptance agreement between the city of Tonganoxie, Kansas, and Mark E. Petrie and Jonathan W. Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item B, C, and D, I believe have a connection. Mr. Brekovich will tell us about it. We're considering approval of an amendment to the city's of Tonganoxie's loan agreement to the KWPCRF project number C20306701. Mr. Brekovich.
Thanks, Mayor. So as the mayor mentioned, these next three items are all related to capital projects, major projects that are part of our capital improvement plan. So you folks, as an elected body, get the privilege, I guess, for lack of a different word, of doing legacy-type projects during your tenure or part of your tenure where you have to, on behalf of the community, spend money in areas that they may never see. Wastewater treatment plant expansion being one of those. Now, a road project, lots of people will see that and make use of it. And staff has a presentation to kind of talk through that, because I think when folks in general see price tags associated with major projects, 5 million, 9 million, 10 million, they become immediately concerned because they're like, well, taxes are going to go up. And that's certainly part of the equation. You know, we have part of the city mill rate is for servicing debt that the city has. And so we take a look at that and expand that typically over 20 and 30 years as we were doing major projects. And we've certainly talked about with the wastewater treatment plant other ways to finance that aren't just mired either in property tax or utility revenues with people paying their monthly rates. And as a reminder, we are in the midst of a utility rate study right now because we haven't made any adjustments for water or sanitary sewer in 5 years. And we know that there's been some movement in those areas. But staff's presentation leading up to the discussion of both the wastewater treatment plant expansion and 14th Street are kind of centered more as a reminder of, hey, we're fortunate. At the very least, we have two sales tax initiatives, one that we use to finance capital projects that includes our share of county sales tax that's collected, as well as the voter-approved here locally special sales tax assessment that we've used for a variety of things, including building a new library, street projects, street maintenance repair projects, and how do those factor in? And then in addition to that, when we look at 14th Street as a corridor, we've been discussing with the city attorney looking at creating a benefit district to help pay back. We've submitted that when it was just a conceptual project to Mid-America Regional Council. It's included as part of their Connect KC 2050 project, and so there could be some financing there, and as well as KDOT. They offer grants for communities that participate in corridor access management, and that we happen to be part of that with our 2440 access. So we thought from a staff perspective it would be beneficial to roll through about 4 or 5 slides to remind all of us of all of those other funding options that are available so that folks don't think this is either going to have to be an increase in their utilities or an increase in their property tax. So with that, Mr. Porter, I'll hand it over to you to kind of roll through some of the data on that. George? I think, is it mainly on 14th? Yeah, I think it might be worth it, Dan, just because we have some data in there about the infrastructure sales tax and other projects with finance through that.
Okay. It's not liking it?
think all of you should have a hard copy at the dais. So this will be the 14th Street Corridor and Contextual Financial Information presentation.
All right. Well, I'm glad we printed out the PowerPoint. So for the members of the City Council, the PowerPoint titled 14th Street Corridor and Contextual Financial Information is what we'll review here. So moving to slide 2, past actions and information. The 14th Street Corridor, for those of you that have reviewed the 2440 Corridor Management Plan, which was actually approved back in 2008 with the City of Tonganoxie, City of Basehor, Leavenworth County, and KDOT. This has been a corridor in the plans and intended for future connectivity and new street construction since at least that date, if not many years beforehand. Our CMIP in many of the years since 2008 has included this project, and in recent years that we can speak to most directly from the perspective of city staff, it's usually been on the 3 to 5 year window in the horizon. Some of that dependent on the pace of development activity, some of it pending completion of utility connections that we'll highlight on a later slide. You'll also recall that earlier this year, the city manager submitted this project and was able to ensure its continued placement within the Mid-America Regional Council Connected KC 2050 list of projects. As you'll recall, it didn't score tremendously well and competitively against the field, but just keeping it on the list was a success and definitely primes us for future consideration for other funding opportunities and support through that agency. The city attorney, as George mentioned, is preparing information for potential benefit district formation for the 14th Street Corridor, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on a later slide. City staff also this June met with the KDOT Metro engineer, Ryan Barrett, had a very good discussion about this project and others along the 2440 corridor in the city of Tonganoxie or within our growth areas. And then finally, you'll remember this August, the City Council authorized a traffic study proposal that is the third of the 3 capital project items on our agenda for discussion tonight. So that slide just sort of sets the stage for where we are and is a reminder of some of those past actions. Looking at the next slide, growth areas and nearby infrastructure, this map should look familiar because it outlines in good detail and in summary some of the key properties situated adjacent to the future 14th Street corridor. You can see that intersection with 2440 circled in red. There's properties to the east of there and then north to the extension to the current termination point of East Street that are owned by, I think at a time recently, a series of 5 developers, most of which had or have previously expressed interest in development of their property for certain purposes. So a very small number of landowners and a significant acreage in total. But what we like about this map and this visual, in addition to the acreage and the layout of developable properties, is the illustration of previous infrastructure investments other than roads, and in some cases adjacent roads. So you'll remember back in 2009, the city entered into an interlocal agreement with the county for the County Road 1 interlocal improvements project, where the city at that time took a strong position pro-growth and contributed $1.5 million repaid to the county over that 10-year period towards overall improvements and the development of the area adjacent to the interchange on I-70. 2017, the city entered into an agreement with the county commission to receive a $5 million business park development grant, which was financed by the county with bond proceeds from the county sales tax election approved in 2016. You'll remember then that we completed that project under budget with about $1.7 million remaining, returned those funds to the county at their request, but then we used about $1.2 million of those funds that were returned to the city as part of the overall project costs for interceptor sewer extension from our wastewater treatment plant to the business park and the looped water line connection from the area generally north and east of our business park, and a new water tower site near the business park property. Those projects, just for context and as a reminder, since it's been several years, were close to almost $3 million for the interceptor sewer all-in project, and over $300,000 for the looped water line. So major infrastructure upgrades aimed at getting utilities to the forefront for the business park, but also for the intervening property between the contiguous city limits and that area. And finally, in 2023, we completed the almost $3.3 million, 750,000 gallon water tower at the business park, with about 47% of that cost paid for by the EDA grant achieved with the U.S. Department of Commerce. So this slide, I think, combines that illustration of the property, the 14th Street corridor's context within that property, and then also highlights how many literally millions of dollars have been invested to help utilities at a scalable size already be installed. And the missing link really right now is that transportation infrastructure piece to connect East Street to a future 14th and 14th to 2440. Any questions on that slide or that recap? Okay. The next slide is the most recent CMIP and prioritization. Apologies for the small font on the slide, but the first left-hand side is the full funded 5-year CMIP plan, then a zoom in the upper right-hand corner of the street maintenance and improvements section. And then highlighted in purple, it's very hard to see, I apologize, but you can see there the designation of 14th Street over a multi-year period for design efforts as well as construction costs. This effort shows, as shown in the CMIP, that 14th Street was initially slated for a start of design with construction activities forecasted as soon as 2027. And that again is dependent on the pace of the project and the progression of it through various approval steps between now and that point. So tonight is really, after the traffic study, really intended to be a springboard for the council's input and feedback that would let staff and our engineering consultants go forward on future phases of the project. I also copied in the lower right-hand corner of this slide a reminder of our prioritization and cross-throughs for some projects we accomplished. So new streets, the priorities as illustrated in the CMIP work session discussions with the City Council were first the 14th Street corridor, second the Front Street reconstruction project, and third 222nd Street major reconstruction. And as you all remember, since that time in May of earlier this year, we have been able to, due to some changes in the school district's prioritization of funding, we've been able to advance the Front Street reconstruction ahead of plans, basically, and also complete maintenance and a mill and overlay treatment of 222nd Street, which extended the life of that street and avoided the necessity of considering a more costly reconstruction of 222nd Street in the near future. We still have other street maintenance priorities, and you can see them listed on the slide, as well as sidewalk infrastructure improvement areas that we've highlighted before. But again, the first priority coming out of those budget work sessions and CMIP development was the 14th Street corridor and progressing in that area as we see the project move. Any questions on this or comments? Okay. The next slide is a reminder of our various funding options, in particular for transportation infrastructure, like a new road construction project, infrastructure sales tax, which we'll talk about in a little more detail, as well as the share of the Leavenworth County sales tax that we receive. One thing of note that we wanted to highlight was the sunset date of both of those. So at that point, they'd be up for new voter election for approvals for similar or other utilizations, but those are not guaranteed outcomes, obviously. So the 12 years still remain until 2037 for the city infrastructure sales tax, which was approved by voters in 2017 originally, and 11 years remain for the county sales tax, which was another 20-year term tax approved in 2016. City GO bond debt proceeds are another common infrastructure financing mechanism for streets. There are aspects of that that differ if a benefit district's created, but that is again a really common use in the past, especially in the city's history and developing either reconstructions or new constructions of major roads. Fuel tax receipts from the state, those have really declined to a paltry amount, so they're not really seen anymore with the cost of road infrastructure in particular as anything more than help for maintenance needs in terms of a scalable resource for us. Construction excise tax, that's a fee of 9 cents per square foot for new development, new areas added into the city's developed areas, and that's prescribed as a relatively minor revenue unless we take into account large tracts of ground. If someone develops the Tailgate Ranch, for instance, that's a huge number if that whole development came into play, but in a smaller scale, the 9 cents a square foot does not equate to noticeable revenue for the cost of new road infrastructure. Again, it helps with maintenance costs primarily, and then other funds as available. Any questions on? Go ahead, Mayor.
Mr. Porter, it's my understanding and my memory that the library is supposed to get half of that tax, not a portion. I could be wrong.
Yeah, the next slide actually will help on that exact question.
All right.
Yeah,
I just didn't want it to get down the line as being a portion of whether it's supposed to be.
Certainly. Certainly. So the next slide is the more deeper dive into the infrastructure sales tax in particular. One of the initiatives, which you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of that slide, are the 2017 list of ballot language and committed usage. And you can see 4 bullet points illustrated there. Construction of a new library, paying for maintenance costs on new and existing infrastructure, paying debt payments on debt for infrastructure, and paying new capital infrastructure improvements generally. So the ballot language, as written in the election, did not prescribe a percentage breakout amongst those 4 bullets, but what it did was in case law and other examples in communities in Kansas, when voter initiatives like that are approved with a list of uses, we've seen the importance demonstrated by challenges or complaints against other communities that chose not to at least dedicate some portion to each of the listed initiatives in the case of a short list like this. That doesn't mean that there can't be a prescribed ratio, but in our case it was not given a ratio, it was just given those 4 uses as approved in 2017. One thing that we haven't tallied and shown in this form though is shown in the pie graph, and that's since 2017, our percentage utilization of the infrastructure sales tax. So you can see we've used just under 50% for library project debt service, which is actually a very good round number and good, I think, to promote. We've also used 34% on street maintenance enhancement. I think everyone can agree the level of investment in street maintenance in the last 8 years has been significantly greater than probably a much longer period of time before that. And then finally, other capital projects, including some aspects of roads and bridges, in particular the 4th Street and Church Street Bridge, also saw some utilization of about 17% of those funds. And in the graph on that same page, we did highlight also that we've currently expended or committed towards expending just over 50% of the projected overall sales tax proceeds from that infrastructure sales tax 3/8 cent, excuse me. So what that means is we still have a lot of flexibility in this area. We are committed to the library debt service through 2038, which is the year after the sunset of this particular sales tax. But as you can see, there's still about $7.6 million in funds projected to be collected over the remaining 12 years that should be seen as a source and an opportunity. We don't have a prioritized dedicated list for this, and this is flexibility. And as you can see by that list of ballot language allowable uses, there's a lot of flexibility in the design of that as well. Any questions on this one? Okay. So the next slide is our share of the county sales tax. It's set up in a very similar fashion. You can see there that we do have a little more available in the upcoming years out of the projected total collections, about 56% or $8.5 million. The committed uses that the city advised the county of prior to the sales tax election are again shown in the lower right-hand corner. Street repairs, bridge repairs and replacements, facility improvements, and city equipment purchases. As you can see from the list right above that of projects we've completed or completed with the assistance of this funding, that's pretty impressive, I think, and can show a big impact. For that $6.5 million. We've helped pay off our $1.5 million back to the county for County Road 1. We've made improvements of various degrees at the water park, the police station, the fire station in multiple years in the case of some of those facilities. We've bought equipment for public works like a mini excavator, skid steer, dump trucks, street sweeper, financing, and we've also completed 2 major bridge reconstruction projects with the huge lifespan of those assets. That utilization and leveraging of the sales tax for that was a really key point, I think really a win for the community and the long-term financial condition of the city in particular. We also utilized a share of that funding for our Front Street project that's currently underway, and we'll kick off construction in the next several months. So it's really important, I think, to highlight the successes that we've had with the use of this funding. But one thing I want to also highlight is, again, $8.5 million over the next 11 years, and that can be committed to debt service. It doesn't have to be cash financing. And so both these 2 sources of sales tax, right, offer either prescribed or allowable uses for debt financing to expand the scope of what we can accomplish with those funds beyond just the cash on hand on an annual basis. Any questions? I'm sorry that's so lengthy, but any questions on that? Okay. The next several slides are in part recap or reminder from earlier budget work sessions. The debt services obligation by fund is sort of a busy chart, but it does show our current issuances and the original amounts and intent and purpose for each. The next slide that shows debt service overview, to me it breaks it out in a simpler way. In the blue is the water fund debt service obligations, which are very minuscule, as you can see at this time. The sewer fund has a much more significant burden in debt. We all know that's due in part to the upcoming capital project for phase 1 of the sewer treatment improvements, which are the subject of 2 agenda items tonight. You can also see shown in 2031 the expected assumption of phase 2 of that same project for roughly a ballpark cost of another $5 million in capital cost. So in our utility analysis that George mentioned is ongoing, we're fully aware of this, and we're fully aware of trying to forecast the future capital needs of both of these respective utilities, but offer our advantages that are inherent in running both utilities and having control over both at the same time. Debt service and property tax obligations for debt service are shown in the purple, and as you can see, those are around just north of $600,000 next year, and drop down closer to $500,000 in 2030, and then in 2034 drop down below $400,000, concluding in 2038 with the end of the library construction debt service obligation. So with that stair-stepping down, we do have funding opportunity for additional property tax funded debt payments. We also have some capacity on an annual basis immediately, not just starting in 2030. So as we look at projects like 14th Street, for instance, those could be funded in part through a combination of sales tax and property tax proceeds without requiring any new tax for sales tax, any property tax, mill levy, or tax rate increase. And that's an equation that can be solved, basically, is what this is intended to convey. Any questions about that information? Okay. The next several slides, and I won't go through each of them in more detail, but those show projected capacity or revenue in exceedance of expenditures, either planned or expected at this moment. And that starts with property tax on slide 10. And you can see revenue in green, debt service in orange, and then capacity shown in the gray line. And then the next slide highlights for the infrastructure sales tax and the capital projects fund the same information. And then my last slide that I'll highlight just for context tonight, not that we're asking for any decisions on financing decisions, but I wanted to give a scale on slide 12 of for a $9 million total project costs, what would 20-year or 10-year debt service, annual debt service total? And then for that relatively half the project cost, $4.5 million, what would the same debt service projection be? And those have a fairly conservative interest rate assumption of 5%, which is fairly standard in today's markets with concurrence of our financial advisor, Baker Tilly. And that just highlights for you all sort of what scale of obligation we would be looking at undertaking in the event that we made a GO bond issuance or some other bond issuance that was repaid by one of the revenues that we talked about tonight. That's a lot. I'm sorry that was so in-depth, but it probably will outpace our financial report tonight. Happy to take any questions you have.
Any questions for Mr. Porter, council? Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to thank Mr. Porter for such a thorough presentation, and hopefully it echoes the importance of the planning that we've been doing as both between staff and you folks as policymakers for the last decade, and then some more recent action on it, but also not losing sight of the fact that from a policy standpoint, you folks have also been able to provide property tax relief back to the constituents, and that we've lowered the city's mill over the last 3 years when other taxing entities have either stayed flat or in fact have had to increase it. And so we just wanted to use it as a reminder that from staff's perspective, we're trying to map and plan all of these future infrastructure upgrades, but keeping that in mind that we would like to also continue that recent practice of either staying flat or providing some property tax relief back to the taxpayers locally. So thank you. And again, a lot of this was geared a little bit towards 14th Street, which is the secondary agenda item, or after we talk about wastewater treatment plant, but I thought it was important to talk about everything as a whole and not lose sight of those things we've already accomplished as well. So with that, Mayor, if you're ready to talk about the loan, the SRF loan, and what we've been able to accomplish since the last meeting that we talked about this, we'd be happy to move into that direction.
Unless our council thinks we need to do it another way, that's fine with me.
Okay, great. Well, I'll introduce Brian Kingsley with BG. I know that you're all familiar with Brian. We've also, and he's the president of BG, we've also had direct contact with Daniel Monaco, who is the wastewater engineer at BG that's helped us do the design and kind of submitted documents to KDHE SRF loan program. So as you probably recall, the last stop we had on this was bids. Although we did get quite a number of bids on this project, they came in considerably higher than the original engineer's opinion of probable cost on it. And so KDHE let us know that there was additional capacity in that program if we wanted to ask for that. And so that's what we've essentially taken this last 30 days or roughly 30 days plus to go back to KDHE. We've got the approvals from their engineers on our bid documents, and then just today, hot off the press, we've got the conditional approval on the loan documents, and that their staff are going to update those and prepare them for our signature. So I know Brian's here to be able to answer any questions, but our thought process for what we're doing tonight is to move forward with awarding the project to the low bidder, which was Crossland Construction, so that we're still within the timeframes of when their bid is still considered good. That the timeframe associated with that has not expired, and then gives us the chance from a staff perspective to make them aware, and BG can make them aware that they are the winning bid, and then give us another additional week or a couple of weeks for the next meeting to finalize those documents with KDHE for the loan itself. Dan or Anna, if you had anything that we wanted to add, I'm trying to keep it at that 50,000 foot level. I think you're all intimately aware of why we had the cost increase. We're fortunate to have KDHE offer that additional capacity. We're able to, even though we needed additional capacity, as a reminder, we were able to stay under the threshold that didn't require any sort of adjustments to our projected interest rates. So we're staying with the same rate and term that we had initially on the project, even though we asked for that additional $1 million plus in capacity on the loan. Brian, I don't know if you've got anything you'd like to add?
Short of an hour-long presentation that you might not want, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions for our engineer?
Brian, what do you think looking at the majority of the offage between the estimate and the final bid, most of it's in that aeration basin, or a significant portion of that was?
As far, are you looking at bid tabulations?
Yeah, your tabulation. What do you think was, 'cause that's pretty significant.
Yeah, that was, it's hard to tell when you have contractors and they're competing with each other. They had 3 or 4 bids, and they all were attending bid lettings back to back that time period. They're seeing bids that are occurring on other projects, and I guess I stopped short or stopped a long time ago in my career trying to second guess where the numbers come in, but there's some gamesmanship that goes on anytime that you have a lot of these contractors bidding a lot of projects at once and have a heavy workload too. So there's a lot of this type of work that's out there right now. I probably sound more like a politician than an engineer trying to answer your question, but the short answer is I can't tell you what's behind a lot of those numbers. What we look at is what we're seeing from bid averages to create an engineer's estimate, and where the bids come in. You could argue that we ought to buy a backhoe and start construction when we see some bids that come in significantly over the bid averages that we've been seeing like this, but we aren't in that business, so.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations on getting confirmation for the loan.
Anything else for engineer? All right, thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
How do you want to proceed from here, George? You want,
So Mayor, I think if we just get a simple motion to approve item B, which would be the amendment on that loan amount, and then we can move up to item C, which is then a little more formal action on the resolution to award the bid to Crossland.
okay. Does anyone have a motion for item B?
I will make a motion to authorize the mayor and city staff to take necessary actions to execute the amendment to the city's loan agreement for KWP CRF project number C20-306701 with KDHE.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item C, council, does anyone have a motion regarding resolution 112502?
I will also then make the motion to approve draft resolution 112502 and approve award of the construction contract for the Tonganoxie, Kansas 2025 wastewater treatment improvements project to Crossland Heavy Contractors, including the base bid plus alternative number 1 at the total cost of $6,349,700, and authorize construction contingent upon KDHE approvals.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dale. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all, gentlemen, appreciate it. We'll move on to item E. Consider approval of change order number 1 for 2025 sanitary sewer improvement project with Westland Construction Incorporated. Mr. Brockovich.
Mayor, I think maybe we might have a misnumbered agenda there, but item D should be the presentation of the 14th Street traffic study report. So that's okay. So if you're ready to move on that, we can.
Yes.
So Mr. Hoskinson's here with BG. He coordinated the traffic study we did. So I know we spent a lot of time talking about how we're going to finance that. And so maybe in reverse order, we're going to talk about what 14th Street could look like. Dan did a great job of touching on the development opportunity within that corridor. We have hundreds of acres of ground owned by 5 owners. They've all expressed interest in development of some kind. But we also know we have an immediate issue with traffic queuing issues related to school traffic that's coming to that campus twice a day for drop-offs and pickups. And so I think Jason's got a conceptual plan that makes a lot of sense, and we wanted to share that with you tonight to kind of get that nod of approval from you to keep moving forward with the design aspect of this project. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason and ask him to go through a presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, good evening, Mayor, City Council. Jason Hoskinson, I lead our Transportation Division at BG. So I'm going to kind of zip over this pretty quickly and kind of just hit the highlights and get to the meat and the potatoes of it of, what are we recommending and what are the next steps on the project. Where do I point it? No worries. You gotta love technology, right? So, there's not a lot on here that I want to bring up other than what's been said. This 14th Street corridor has been talked about for a number of years, a couple decades. The screenshot on the right there is actually a snippet from the corridor study that identifies this 14th Street corridor as a full access full access street to Highway 24 in the future. So we're kind of building off of that and moving to where we are at today. With the traffic study you approved for us to pursue, we collected existing traffic to understand kind of where traffic patterns are at today, applied some of the information we know about the school, the school studies, all the traffic congestion in the area, and then started looking at, okay, well, if we put a 14th Street in, what kind of estimated improvements, what kind of diverted traffic might we have? And then from there, we started looking at, well, once the 14th Street's there's a good potential for growth that Mr. Brockovich was talking about. So we looked at a few different scenarios with the estimate of traffic growth, and really this is looking at all that undeveloped land pretty much between Washington and Kansas along the east-west 14th Street corridor, both west and east of 2440. So we took a look at the whole area, and then we started splitting it up into, well, you can see 3 scenarios there. Okay, we've got existing and diverted traffic now, but what happens with 25% growth? What happens with 66? What happens with 100%? And as we got into this, I actually split the scenario 1 into a 1A and 1B, because I wanted to see kind of what would happen if all this only happened on one side versus the other side of the highway, and how does some of that impact our recommendations. So under scenario 1, you can see this, I'm not going to read the numbers necessarily, but we're looking at a lot of residential in there, some mixed use as well. But the scenarios equate to scenario 1A, just on the east side, would be about 300 new dwelling units in the community on the east side of 24. Scenario 1B, whether that happens on both sides, but that's the full 25% of the corridor, would be another 571 dwelling units. So that's townhomes, it could be some apartments if you have a little higher density in certain areas. And really what we tried to look at is, what are the development trends in Tonganoxie right now and your surrounding areas, and then apply that to this area to see, what's the past 5 years look like, and if we project that out, where could this go? So, and then from there, we use that to provide some recommendations. And the highlight, I guess, would be scenario 1. The recommendation would be having utility infrastructure on the east side of 2440. Makes a lot of sense to address some of the concerns by extending a 14th Street corridor east of 2440 and connecting it into East Street. To do that, we'd need to be looking at turn lanes on 2440 for the 14th Street intersection. And then we're recommending a 3-lane section just with some of the driveways, the access points, future access points, along with some pedestrian infrastructure for a 14th Street extension over to East Street, and then extending East Street up to where it dead ends right now at the south end of the school property. So scenario 2 and 3 are, again, that's kind of some recommendations in there would be monitoring growth as it happens and projecting out and seeing where you're growing. Right now, if we look back at those number of dwelling units and the number of building permits you've been issuing per year and kind of equate that to those different scenarios, the recommendation in scenario 1 is a 2-way stop, but I would say somewhere in the 5 to 15-year range, you're probably looking at a need for a traffic signal at 14th Street if those projections continue forward the way they are now. So if it happens faster, you got more growth. So that's kind of where we're at with that. If we move on to the next slide. So here's just a kind of very rough plan view, overview of kind of what we're recommending. North is up, so we got 2440 on the left. The school property, you can kind of see it over there on the right, and basically extending infrastructure down and around. We've got some drainage areas we're gonna have to be dealing with that we've looked at. We've also looked at profiles, a number of other things to get to this point, but this is kind of the highlight of that. And then on the next slide shows, so now north is turned to the right here. And so this would be kind of focusing on the turn lane improvements on 2440. We'd look at widening that to the east. There's some construction implications with that we're budgeting for in the scenarios, but that's kind of the highlights of where we're at with all that. So kind of rounding this out with what are the next steps. We're projecting about an call it about a $9 million project to implement what you saw on those graphics there in today's dollars. If we kind of look at a fast track forward, the funding scenario may dictate how fast this goes. We're probably looking at about a 1-year process to get through a design, property acquisitions, and this is kind of on a faster path, but getting through all that, establishing benefit districts or whatever that may look like, and then about a 1-year construction window to build the project. The approach we're suggesting, though, would be to go ahead and start in with the design and authorize staff to then start approaching the Mid-America Regional Council, approaching KDOT. As George had mentioned, there's KDOT's access management money. There's a pot of $2 million per project, and all of these improvements are eligible for that amount of money. Question is, when is it going to be available? And we need to have those discussions with KDOT. They want to see a little bit of commitment too up front side and say, well, if we're going to commit to this, is the city moving forward with it, and what's your time frame? So that would be our approach. Start in with design, beginning of 2026. Approach the agencies, come back to the council, say spring, summer of next year, with some updates on where that funding source looks like, what the budgets are looking like, and how the city could absorb a project to move forward or continue moving forward on into construction. And depending on how that goes, hopefully construction in 2027 and hopefully as much grant dollars as we can get to interject into the project. With that, I'd entertain any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
No.
You want to move forward in this direction?
Yes, anybody who's ever navigated that school traffic would be cheering, just seeing that map. Yeah.
Well, it should alleviate a lot of it, but it won't solve all the problems there.
Certainly.
There's just a lot of traffic coming to that school, but it will certainly open up some opportunities to change those traffic patterns and alleviate a ton of congestion that you're seeing right now.
It's the worst part of my commute every morning.
Yes,
I worked.
I believe it.
I had a 40-minute commute, so.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, item E. Now we're ready for item E. Consider approval of change order number 1 for 2025 sanitary sewer improvement project with Westland Construction Incorporated. Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be doing my best Kent Heskett impression for you all tonight to describe this item. You'll remember earlier in 2025, we approved a contract with Westland Construction out of Baser for improvements in several areas generally in the vicinity of the Tonganoxie Public Library to the northwest and to the east and northeast, and various methods of sewer rehab and maintenance efforts. In the course of the project, which is, I would say, over halfway completed at this point, but still some work to be done in the month of December, there have been some unit cost change orders requested and recommended for approval by our city engineering project manager. And those include the addition of concrete surfacing primarily as the biggest driver, and that results in a little more than a $10,000 increase in the project cost. The original project cost, as you'll remember, was $256,134.19. So that change order component is one that we want to highlight, that staff do recommend support for the requested adjustment. In addition to that, though, there's an area, two specific areas in near vicinity to the project work near the Mi Potra restaurant site that are additional areas in which our existing sewer main shows TV evidence of obstruction or bad condition. Those point repairs, a part of which is trenchless and a part of which is a dig up and fix on site, total about $17,000 in an adjustment, about $18,000, excuse me, in an adjustment as well. We do save in mobilization costs if we utilize this contractor while they're on site, and it does make for some significant cost savings versus bidding out the project again and having to mobilize another contractor. We've coordinated this work with the contractor who's on site now, and they'll be able to complete parts of it in very short order and finish up the remainder in December along with the rest of our original project scope. So in all, the agenda statement does illustrate that the change order total is just over $28,595, and that does bring the project total cost to $284,729.69. If approved, we'll apply for a new PEC to enable the project to have a sales tax exemption on the materials that they purchase, and we'll also include communications with the contractor as soon as possible after tonight to share with them your decision. But staff fully support this project. Mr. Heskett shared to us and would like to share to you that he deems it very important that we do this additional work, especially as there have been backup issues within the close vicinity over the past several years that he has record of and has helped them alleviate in each case, but need to adjust these things before they cause a more pervasive problem. So happy to take any questions you have, though.
Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Porter? If not, I would accept the motion.
I'll move that we approve the change order request number 1 of $28,595.50, bringing the total project cost to $284,729.69 for the sanitary sewer improvement project with Westland Construction, Inc.
Thank you, Mr. Partridge. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item F on the agenda is consider approval of the fire department grant award for fire equipment. Mr. Brockovich? No, Mr. Porter, my fault.
Thank you. So this item is being brought to you sort of midstream, and the rationale for that is previously the singular award of grant reimbursement under this program, which is a grant award funded through the Kansas State Firefighters Association and the FEMA Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, came in an incremental basis per set of bunker gear. And so the city's award in this case is due to us being a blended department with part-time, full-time paid personnel and volunteers. And in this case, volunteers are eligible based on their inclusion in our roster in the department. They're eligible for certain reimbursements for gear purchases needed to get them on board. So this grant program is part of an effort the state is making to help alleviate staffing issues and cost increases, which in the case of bunker gear, as you'll remember, those of you that have been on the council for some time, Bunker gear has gone up significantly in cost, and in many cases, we also look at lightweight gear, full-size gear, full-weight gear, and make every effort to save the most expensive kinds of gear for specific calls. So this project, though, as we accumulated up to 3 sets of structural gear under this grant program, it did exceed the city manager's threshold for donation or acceptance of grant funds. And so we'd like to ask the council for the motion to authorize staff to utilize funds not to exceed $11,787,000 for purchase of this PPE or protective gear. That again is 100% reimbursed through the grant program. So there's no financial loss to the city through this purchase. It's just simply a purchase and then be reimbursed in full. But happy to take any other questions if you have them.
Any questions for Mr. Porter? Seeing none, I'd accept a motion.
I can make a motion to authorize staff to use funds not to exceed $11,787 for personal protective equipment and fire department future equipment needs as outlined in FEMA assistance to firefighter grant.
All right, thank you, Ms. Stevens. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to the city manager agenda. Mr. Brajkovic?
Mayor, just the one item tonight, and that's the monthly financials, and Mr. Porter's doing a great job of running the meeting, so we'll just keep it with him if it's okay.
All right. I don't have a lot of detail tonight on the financial report. The included financial report is accurate through the end of the month of October 2025. A couple of things of note. We did expend a few more of our ARPA fund proceeds. So after starting the year with a little more than $450,000 in federal grant proceeds encumbered but not yet expended, we have now spent in total over $93,000 this year. So it brings our total funds remaining down just over $356,000. As a reminder, those were all encumbered as part of the sewer project design back in 2023. So we're working hard to get those expended in full by the end of next year, which is the requirement for the ARPA funding deadline for expenditure of all funds subject to forfeiture or repayment requirements. So we're continuing to work on that initiative. As we noted in earlier reports, in early October, we approved a budget amendment to the Fire Equipment Fund to adjust expenditures and revenues planned for the FEMA Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program. We were very excited to get that grant, accepted it at a city council meeting, and then the federal government ceased to function at the moment. And so we were unable to accept that grant. And fortunately, just today, we learned that the portal to accept the grant has reopened, and even though our initial 30-day window has long expired due to the length of the shutdown, we were given an exception, and we'll be able to complete that acceptance tomorrow. So we just blinked and lost 40 days, but that's okay, and we'll keep moving ahead with that project. Looking at year end, we are anticipating noticing a public hearing and a budget amendment for December 15th. This is in similar fashion to last year, and it has to do with our planned expenditures in the Capital Projects Fund and in the city's general fund. Our state budget forms and our legal expenditure limits are going to finish the year well within the margins approved in the budget last 2 Septembers ago for 2025. But based on cost outcomes and advancement of certain projects, we do want to show planned expenditure changes, and we'll highlight what those rationales are at that meeting in more detail. But just wanted to make you aware that that would be coming up for those funds. In addition to that, the water capital fund is probably also going to request an amendment just based on the pace of purchasing equipment and other capital projects. The remainder of the report is in the standard fashion, so I won't highlight too much, but sales and use tax is continuing to progress well as we close this fiscal year. We received our 10th monthly remittance for the month of October on time, and it actually increased our difference from last year, year to date, to total city collections just under 6% ahead of last year's pace, and total county collections at 2.5% ahead of last year's pace. Overall collections just under 5% ahead of last year's pace. We're glad to see this trend. It really has been a solid year after last year coming in less than budget expectations and also fairly significantly less than the prior year at many points in that year. So it's good and comforting to see this, especially as we look to sales tax like we did in the earlier presentation tonight as such an integral revenue for us over the next 10 to 12 years in various capacities. I'm happy to take any questions you have on the rest of the financial report, but you can see it included in the packet in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Are there any questions for him? Nope.
On the, just on the water usage out at Hills, is it still consistent and running?
We're in the ballpark of just over 6 million a month the last several months, which is very, very strong and ahead of our budget expectations.
Very good, thank you.
George, did you have anything else?
Nope,
Okay.
thank you.
Item 7, the city attorney agenda, Ms. Kirstelich? No items, Mayor. All right, thank you. Item 8, I can't read tonight. Mayor Pro Tem agenda, Ms. Stevens?
No items tonight.
Item 9, city council agenda. Does anyone have anything? Nope. Okay. Mayor agenda, I have a few things. Bear with me, Matt. I'm so sorry you didn't get elected, and we're going to miss you terribly. And I'll have more to say about that in a couple weeks, or I hope. The citywide food drive started this week, and we'll look forward to what that brings from the elementary school and Genesis Christian Academy. Christmas tree lighting is on Saturday at, well, the parade starts at 5, so we'll light her up soon after that. And buy local, that's the other thing. That's it. Is there someone who wants to adjourn this meeting besides me?
I don't see anyone, but, so I guess I'll go ahead and make a motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
Thank you both. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you very much. See you in a couple weeks.